Can you tell us a bit about the experiment you did when you blocked up for 10 days?
Yeah, awful, awful idea. I'm glad we did it in the end. I had been talking with the chief of rhinology research at Stanford, who had been complaining how no one was paying attention to the nose. He's like, this is such an essential organ. And he knew how bad mouth breathing was, but nobody really knew how quickly the problems associated with mouth breathing, respiratory distress, the fatigue, the increased chance of having infections. No one knew how quickly that came on. So we were talking at lunch, and I said, well, why don't you test this? You're at Stanford. You have the ability to test this. He's like, I can't test that. That'd be unethical to knowing what I know. So I volunteered I said, well, why don't we do an experiment, 20-day experiment, and found someone else, a breathing therapist from Sweden. Thought this would be interesting to find one of the best breathers in the world and make him one of the worst, by mouth breathing. But we didn't want this to be like a supersize me experiment, because something like 25 to 50% of the population breathes through its mouth. So we were lulling ourselves into a condition that I knew as a kid I was a mouth breather, and that I would probably know later on in life. So for 10 days, we had silicone plugs up our nose, tape over them so we could get absolutely no air up our nose. We were forced to breathe through our mouth. And within a night, we both started snoring. We hadn't snored before. A couple nights after that, we were snoring 4 hours throughout the night. We got sleep apnea as well. We started choking on ourselves. We were fatigued, neurotic, crazy. There are subjective markers, but then there's real data, and it's the real data that I tried to show. My blood pressure went up about 15 points just by changing the way in which I breathed. But the snoring and sleep data I just thought was fascinating. And it's something I don't think a lot of people are talking about is how the pathway in which you take air it's directly related to snoring and sleep apnea. So some people say there's less of a connection with sleep apnea. I can understand that, because sleep apnea is caused by the tongue falling back in the throat, whereas snoring is caused by the soft tissue at the back